Thank you very much for the invitation, Michael, and all the team. I'm really happy to be here. So I will talk about biological and cultural diversity in the choice of food for instrument making, but I'll try to show through this how we need to connect wood physics and craftsmanship knowledge. So why should we try to connect different fields of knowledge? Well, wood as a material, its behavior is studied by the fields of mechanics and physics, but of course it's not a man-made material. It's made by a living being, by a tree, and if we want to understand its production and its microstructure and structure, this belongs to the field of biology, ecology, forestry. And of course, wood was one of the most ancient used materials by humankind. And this use by mankind are partly studied by the field of humanities, anthropology, archaeology, but in fact most of the research is still done by craftsmen themselves. So if we want to get an integrated vision of wood as a material, its meaning for the environment and for us, I feel we need to connect these three kinds of domains. And of course, there are some interactions between the domains. For example, the fields of biophysics and biomechanics is quite well established, and it makes the links between the biology and the physics or mechanics, and we can get new knowledge and information from both sides. Similarly, we have connections between the use of food, traditional use of food by mankind, and the biology and ecology, and this is studied by ethnobotany and anthropology of techniques. But the link between material behavior, physics, and cultural use is a bit limited. Most of the wood physics is applied in technologies rather of an industrial nature, or in industry, or sometimes also, more and more, to the conservation of the objects of heritage, so the tangible heritage, not so much the intangible heritage. But on the other hand, the reverse way to get inspiration in physics from the craftsmanship or to understand some aspects of craft thanks to the use of physics, we are only a few people dealing with this, Michael and Katharina probably among those. So wood in instrument making is an interesting field for studying this connection between wood science and craftsmanship because there is a very high biological diversity in chosen species. There is a high cultural and also functional diversity in the built instruments. And there's a big diversity of the wood parameters involved schematically along the life cycle of an instrument. So first, you have, among the important wood parameters, you have the availability. Of course, you cannot build something with a material you don't have. There are many important factors about visual aspect and touch of the material. Many important factors related to the workability, either with tools or with heat bending, heat forming. Some group of properties which have a strong impact on the acoustical behavior of the finished instrument, so that density, elasticity, I will explain, anisotropy, which is the difference in property between the different directions. I won't talk about it, I'm sorry. Properties which are related to the long time, to the resistance of the instrument. So, like the hardness, if the surface of a fingerboard does not mark too much under your nails, there is this resilience and resistance to shocks, and of course the stability, may it be towards the weather or towards the elapsing time. These different parameters don't have the same importance depending on the different parts and function of instruments. So, for example, the acoustic properties these mechanical and acoustic properties have a very strong impact on the top plates of string instruments, in the reeds of wind instruments, in the vibrating parts of xylophones and the like, in the bows. But for some other instruments, for example, for the body of the woodwinds, the stability with time on humidity can be the most important factor. For some parts, the heat bending is the most important factor, but even if one factor is very important, all the other may be important. For example, in a bow, you need a very fine grain because it's a small piece of wood. You want to have a beautiful object. So visual aspect is very important, but heat bending is also, and stiffness is also, and resistance to breaking is also very important. So, but wood in instrument making is not a simple field to study the connection between wood science and craftsmanship, because there's quite a big diversity of actors all along the chain. Wood provider and forester, the luthier or instrument maker, the musician and the listener. And all these have different perceptions of wood. They will appreciate different aspects, different parameters. I won't detail everything, but the wood provider will have a good appreciation of availability, of visual or touch aspect. The maker about almost all properties. The musician, well, can have some environmental concern about availability. He can see and touch something and hear something, but this is already filtered by the structure of the instrument. And the listener, well, it's further filtered by the musician and by the room. Anyhow, the people who take into account the majority of woodfetters are the instrument makers, and the auditory perception of wood is linked to mechanical properties. So I will shortly present you these mechanical properties. I'm sorry, I'm a wood mechanician, so I talk with graphics, but I will only use these two graphics and take it as comic strips. If you don't like the drawing, you just listen to the bubbles. So I will talk about specific gravity, density, modulus of elasticity, which determines the stiffness of a piece of given dimension. And what we use a lot is the specific modulus of elasticity, which determines the frequencies of resonance of a piece of given geometry or the speed of sound, and the damping coefficient, which determines if the sound will vanish quickly or will last longer. Now, if we plot the archetypal species on these graphics, well, we can see that depending on the functions, so the parts and families of instruments, we have very different types of material. Basically, it covers the whole range of properties we can get for wood. Well, we want dense and stiff wood for violin bows. We want a high speed of sound for spruce, for top plates, and so on, very low damping for xylophones. So, well, if that was it, my talk could be finished. But there are several questions. The first very important question is, which are the sources and what extent of diversity and variability can we find in wood properties? So why species are different? Spruce is here, but how far from this average can it be? This is very important, but I won't have time to talk about it. Second question is, are these Western archetypes the only possible choice for musical instruments? So how do we get information on the wood used in instrument making and why and how they are chosen? It involves a lot of different disciplines which are necessary to take into account if we want to have a wide-scale view of the topic. There are quite a big number of published things, either found on the internet or not, but some major aspects are lesser studied. One is the diversity of woods. Here is an estimation of the amount of information we have on just vibrational properties. Here is the number of identified species in green, and here the number of vibrational tests. So the 33 species of spruce have obtained as much research as the 50,000 species from tropical rainforest. there's not enough information on the craftsmanship knowledge on issues neither. So a good option to obtain information is to ask those who are directly concerned, so to make collaborations and to conduct interviews with makers. The good point is that we can collect samples of qualified wood and run physical measurements on this, and therefore we sort of fill the gap in the two different fields. And to collect this on a wider scale than on a worldwide sample, I created a relational database on the diversity of woods and instrument making. It contains three main parts. What is the use of wood in instrument making, and here are the bubbles represent the amount of information depending on type of instrument and of regions of the world. The second part is very important. It's all about the woody species, the taxonomy, either scientific names or common names, if the conservation of the species, so on, so on, so on. The botanical name, a correct botanical name, is very important because it's the only way we have to make a link between the cultural use of wood and the physics. And the third part of the database I built collects all the data we have for the moment on the vibrational properties of wood. And the numbers give the amount of information for each part. So how did we arrive? How did the current archetypes association between wood and function historically develop? To study this, I take the example of the evolution of European bows through history. This is a collaboration with a wonderful friend and specialist bow maker. She did a lot of historical research and reconstruction of bows from the Middle Ages to the present time. And I did the mechanical measurement on nearby specimen. So in the Middle Ages, we had bows which look like a hunting bows on the use of local temperate species, which are not so dense and medium rigidity. At the Renaissance, the shape is evolving, the music also, and there was a focus on the stiffer hardwood available. At the Baroque era, the bows get very long to allow new musical styles, and they're made of snakewood, which has very high density and quite stiff. In the end of the 18th century, this structural tendency went further, and the absolutely densest and most rigid wood we know were used, but it went too far, and so the present day situation is a bit away backwards compared to the classical era. We can find a similar thing for dynamic properties, but what is important is that we have very different materials, but they are adapted to each model and time in history. Because there was a joint evolution between the material, the geometry, the musical repertoire, and the playing modes and possibilities. And also the development of Baroque and later bows could not have been possible without the early importation of woods from Latin America. So why am I talking about the origin? Is there a link between wood properties and biogeography? So here if we look at the distribution of properties by broad categories, softwoods, temperate hardwoods, tropical hardwoods, well, the highest density, this is known, can only be found in tropical hardwoods, but also the highest modulus of elasticity and the lowest damping. And well, this may be mitigated by looking at secondary temperate species. And it may depend on continents. For example, we have information on this only for density, but the repartition of density is different between tropical Asia, tropical Africa, and tropical America. And it's even different on a local scale depending on the distribution of species and the environment. So this has historical implication. It allows technical developments through early importation. Does it have implication for cultural studies? Are there links between local forest resource and musical instruments? Is there a permanence or divergence in wood choice in terms of properties through continents? This example is on the xylophones and slide drums through different regions. These are major species for which we already have data on vibrational properties. So the wood used for classical marimbas, Honduran rosewood, is dense, stiff, and has very low damping. This is the normal damping, horizontal on the curved line. Some previously Rio Brazilian rosewood was used, but not so much appreciated. But what is funny is that in the country, in the region of origin of the marimba, in Central America, it's not Dalbergia, but a closely related species which is used, but still with similar properties. And in Africa, which seems to be the historical cradle of xylophones, the paddock Pterocarpus soyoxi is very often used. It's a bit lighter, but still with very low damping, or another Pterocarpus in some other parts of Africa. And in Southeast Asia and Melanesia, there are other Pterocarpus or another species which are very much appreciated. They are lighter, but still with a lower damping than average. So depending on the geocultural areas, we have favorite woods with different densities and stiffness, but they all have a very low damping. And there is a predominance of the botanical subfamily of the Faboideae or Papilionoideae. Here are only predominant species, but in the database I made, we have 81 species listed for idiophones, and there is still this predominance of Faboideae. I will skip this, which is on the amount of diversity. So what does it mean, this predominance of certain botanical families? If we look at what I said previously on the distribution of properties between temperate or tropical hardwoods, is it a matter of biogeography, or is it a matter of the nature of species? So, in fact, the very low damping found in tropical hardwoods is mostly led by three main families or subfamilies, so the Faboideae, Moraceae, and Lauraceae. And the higher damping in temperate hardwoods is quite a lot led by some botanical families also. But some of the, when we find some of the Faboideae or Moraceae in the temperate region, they rather behave like tropical species in terms of damping. So this probably is a partial explanation for the historical predominance of xylophones and slide drum in tropical versus temperate regions. Well, now if we switch on to another important part, the soundboards of musical instruments. Regarding the speed of sound, there is a little peak at the very highest values, which is represented by softwoods and especially spruce. So this is the main choice for soundboards in Western cultures, and is it the only choice for soundboards? Well, the family of Pinaceae, to which spruce belongs, is northern hemisphere, but quite widely distributed. And the genus Piaceae is a bit more narrow, but still quite widely distributed. So if we look at different woods for one function, the top plates of string instruments, so here are the properties of spruce, our reference. In the case of guitar, another species can be used only for sound preference and has already quite different properties. In Latin America, some used woods are still a little bit close to European instrument-making woods. But from Middle East to Far East, we have the use of species which have very different vibrational properties, or not so different. So the only common thing between all these soundboard woods is that they have moderate densities, but they have very different acoustical properties, and they are both conifers and broadleaf species, even when there is a local resource of very fine conifer woods. So the Western classical standard cannot be extrapolated to other cultures. And of course, we have to remember there are very different construction and structures of the instruments. There are differences in the playing modes, and there are differences in the aesthetic preferences. The archetypal associations between wood and function seem relative to cultural aspects. And the third question is, how do instrument makers choose and qualify their wood supply? Can we say that stiffer wood will be better for bow? Can we say that less stiff spruce will be worse for guitars or violin? Well, that's not so obvious. So, which wood properties are most perceived by instrument makers? This was studied regarding the sound quality of wood for xylophones, either within one preferred species or between very different species unknown to this use. Vibration damping was always the best descriptor of subjecting grading. What was very interesting in a study is that they compared two different makers, and they did a grading which is very close between them, and the different qualities are very close to each other. In fact, the difference between their different gradings is the same amplitude as the precision of the measurements that we do in laboratories. Of course, there is diversity in species, but there's also diversity in the specialties of instrument making. So we studied the global grading of wood between different makers, one making xylophone, another pieces of violins, and one flute. These are different measured properties. The global quality grading was, yes, very strongly linked with damping for the xylophone maker here. Only the colored bars mean something. But for other making specialties, there was either weak links or no links, no color, with the acoustical properties, with the acoustic signal, or any of the properties that we measured. So this means that instrument makers use craft-specific and multiple criteria, and our lab protocols have to be adapted to understand this. So to continue with sensory evaluation, is it a way to link hand knowledge and quantitative properties? A very important study that was made about grading of spruce by violin makers showed that, well, the optical properties was related to growth ring and color, the acoustical properties was related to density, and the global quality was related to the same thing. So no clear link to acoustical wood properties. But when you really ask the people to express what they think about the wood and the sound it produces, in the case of guitar, the two preferred species, which are different properties, gave clearly different instruments in terms of timbre, either bright or soft timbre. So this means that we have to concentrate, if we want to understand, we have to concentrate on one species and on the variability between different individuals. And we combine the two different approaches. So what do luthiers say? So we did an opinion survey on what do luthiers sense through psychosensory tests. So luthiers say that tone wood is very important for violin sound, and that wood choice is mostly based on touch and sight. But when through the psychosensory test, we found that they have a very fine perception of all the properties through all sense, but they appreciate acoustical properties through visual evaluation. This means they empirically use structure properties relation that they gain through craftsmanship experience. And to finish, well, there is currently the current environmental crisis also affects instrument making. Well, some of the woods with exceptional properties are threatened. So a lot was said about this yesterday during the first session. Many of the woods that are listed by the CITES are woods of musical instruments. It affects a lot non-Western instruments also, not only Western instruments. There is an acceleration of these listings. Some former alternatives are now listed too, and while some temperate woods could be next or at least are threatened by other environmental threats. But what is very important is that the handcrafted instrument making is not the cause of this threat, it suffers the consequences. So are there solutions? Of course, species conservation and plantation, and bow makers invested a lot of efforts and money into this since 30 years ago, but it needs more time. We could look for alternative species. From a mechanical point of view, we can find one, but could they be accepted from the point of view of workability, aesthetics, and sonority? And would they be sustainable? So I would suggest that the rare wood should be restricted to the use by individual handcrafted production, and that, well, industrial production which does not like variability could do with more common woods. And I had a conclusion, but I think I'm late, so you can read it. Sorry for being longer. No, but I will just say that the wood choice is really, it's important to remember it's a combination between material performance, of availability and sustainability, and sociocultural parameters. I wanted to say that craftsmanship philosophy can inspire more ethical and sustainable uses of wood. And there's much to be done, but I'm a little bit worried because I'm only 41 years old, and several of my preferred research topics concern wood that I did not finish to study them, but they're already threatened. So, and it's the same for traditional cultures. So I'm not sure I have the solution.
Thank you very much.